Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I Man here from the Block Render, MetaZone, Rovi, and MScribe, and today we're going to talk about more bitmaps, dude.
More.
I know.
Can we ever get enough, Will?
You know what? There's so many things happening in bitmaps that
I know.
It's hard to not talk about it.
Correct.
And
it's like hyper relevant to what I guess we're very, very, very passionate about and have a very, very, very good, deep
understanding.
And experience.
We have like 40 years of experience in the Metaverse.
That's what it seems like, right? Yeah. So, I mean, that doesn't discredit everything else that's going on in Web3. Everything else is equally as interesting.
Apparently, there's a lot of stuff going on that
you're totally out of the loop on. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things happening that I have to deal with. So.
Understood. So the thing that's interesting about this conversation is, we had a podcast interview with Jack Liu recently.
That's right.
And we discussed a lot of really interesting topics. And, if we think we're OG, maybe in the metaverse space we are, he's OG in the Bitcoin sense, right?
Yeah.
And Web3, whatever. He's been around as long as anybody, I would say.
Yeah, since like 2013. That's 10 years.
A long time to be like deeply ingrained in
100 years of crypto experience.
Pretty much. But through that conversation, I guess we kind of like introduced something that's been on our minds of like, like what is Bitmap really? Because, we've been having to consistently battle the FUD attacks coming in from all different vectors, right?
Yeah.
People just completely discrediting Bitmap like it's nothing of value. It absolutely contributes nothing to the metaverse. We've heard those arguments, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names, but you guys know who they are. They're out there. They're very public with their salt.
Yeah.
Some very salty lads out there. So we talked about what it is we think Bitmap does as far as like, what is it providing us as Metaverse developers?
Mm-hmm.
We have a very unique value add here, right? And what do you think?
Our perspective is we need to be able to look back in history and determine some parallels.
Okay.
Because history seems to rhyme in terms of like what the future holds for us.
Yeah.
And what we think of the metaverse is just like the next evolution of the internet, which is just the internet except in a 3D sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to believe that in the future we're going to be spending a lot of more time, like 20 years from now, just on like these 2D interfaces, right? These tablets and phones, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a little bit more immersive, right? And so what did the internet do in order to create this like multi-trillion-dollar ecosystem that we so depend on?
Yeah.
Right. And so what it did was it built on top of standards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go, we'll link this in the notes, but we listened to a podcast with it's called Waveform with MKBHD and like his crew. They were talking about the history of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we listened to that. I mean, they explained the history of the internet like so perfectly, and you could draw a lot of parallels to a lot of the stuff that needs to happen for the metaverse, right? And so one of those parallels is TCP/IP. So TCP/IP is a way for different internet websites to be able to communicate with each other, different nodes of the ecosystem to be able to communicate with each other.
Yeah. So what was it like before that moment, like in the internet space, right?
There was just silos.
Yeah, silos is right, where basically like universities or like government institutions, I guess, that develop their own intranets.
Yeah.
Right, where you could transfer information among like a cluster of nodes, but then like all the other clusters have no idea what's going on.
Correct.
They can't communicate with one another, right? So you can't build a web.
Yeah.
So that was the inflection point of the internet, right?
Yeah. As soon as everybody's adopted TCP/IP as a standard, all of a sudden those clusters can communicate with each other. Yeah. And instead of working on the same research projects, they started working on different research projects and shared notes.
Beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And that was interesting because the early pioneers of the internet, they kind of like forcefully, they forced everyone to adopt like this standard. If you don't adopt it, then basically you're not going to be supplied anymore with like all the necessary hardware and stuff like that.
And it was because it was funded by ARPANET and DARPA.
Yeah.
Right. So the defense agency and like this agency that was designed to create this internet. And so they developed these standards and they forced everybody to adopt those standards because they were funding these different research projects.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't adopt those standards, we'll pull your funding and you're off the network. So of course, and this is at a time where people were spending, the last decade with their intranet. And so they heavily relied on that income from, these grants.
Yeah.
And so they had to adopt. And so as soon as they did, then we had, the first true internet transaction.
Yeah. So that's the big parallel, right? TCP/IP. So if you're able to assign IP addresses to all the different like hardware devices connected to this web infrastructure, now you're able to like relay relevant information and data packets right to the right place.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the value of like that inflection point, that technical standardization process, right? So now everybody's kind of operating under that same framework.
Yeah.
So that's very much severely lacking in the metaverse space, and we know that because we've been developing for it for a while now.
Yeah.
And every time we build something, it's a localized, function or experience. Yeah.
Dude, the parallels are so stark and from our perspective, it's so obvious.
Yeah.
That every metaverse is its own little cluster, and it doesn't need to be that way.
It doesn't. Yeah, it serves the today environment, I guess, well enough to where all these different metaverse founders have their own visions and whatnot. They're building their own communities, but yeah, a much more mature metaverse is going to resemble much more like how the internet proliferated, right? A bigger network, a global one where everybody is
global contributors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why when we saw Bitmap for the first time, we made these parallels, right? Where you see, and then just the simplicity of it, right? We that's why we talked about in earlier videos. Other people were proposing standards outside of, I guess, like the Blockimoto standard for like, and then they were adding different variables that were much more like limiting, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we've got to maintain this simplicity so that it acts simply as an identification system, just like an IP address does.
Yeah.
So that the actual technology layers that are built on top of that, they have the right roots to communicate to.
That's right. That's
so
right.
all the information and data can be like very directly channeled to the right positioning in this virtual space.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
To us, that's super valuable. So that's when we see projects that are like not doing that.
Yeah, it's a missed opportunity on their part. It's a missed opportunity on the community's part because all of a sudden, all these like silos start forming
Again.
Yeah,
it's like what is the point of this standard if we're just going to ignore it and just leverage it for a different,
And I understand it's like a lot of these projects that form, they don't come with this baggage that we have an understanding in terms of the metaverse. And so they have like their own technical structure and technical implementation of the metaverse. And then all of a sudden, here comes this bitmap thing that explodes.
Yeah.
And now they have to adjust to what they're doing to fit this standard. And it's tough. It's not easy. And so they go along with the, sticking down the path that they started instead of changing things and fitting with the standard because it doesn't necessarily fit their MO.
Yeah, correct.
So,
and it's not completely obvious, right, that we should be relying on much more like broader infrastructure components.
No, it's definitely not obvious.
Yeah, this parallel reality of like what the metaverse is and what the internet, how it became.
Yeah.
That is like very largely misunderstood, right? And a lot of people think the metaverse is just everyone's building their own games.
Yeah.
Everyone's building their own games, and at some point, someone's gonna build like, I don't know, a fucking wallet or something to where like everyone's assets just kind of like end up in the same place.
Yeah,
that's really not like the true infrastructure of the metaverse. It's just kind of like trying to mold this idea of the metaverse, this concept, onto like an existing infrastructure landscape, which doesn't mesh. Right? It's actually the real thing that needs to happen is we need to start from the ground up and build it metaverse specific.
Yeah, and that's why Bitmap is so important because that is starting from the ground up.
Literally as ground as it gets.
Yeah, there's no more ground to be found here.
Right, and so it's happening all on Bitcoin. Never would have imagined that. It just kind of happened that way.
Yeah,
and so as soon as it did, it just that was our opportunity, right? It's like, okay, now we could build some infrastructure on top of the proper frameworks, the foundation.
Yeah, and I mean,
not just us, everybody can. Yeah.
Part of our responsibility is to explain these things to everybody so that it's understood how important this is. And the TCP/IP thing is the ground layer of the internet. And so Bitmap, kind of emulating TCP/IP, is the ground layer of the metaverse, at least right now for the Bitmap ecosystem. And it could expand beyond to other chains as long as it follows this standard.
Yeah, 1000%.
Did you know that we're more than just a YouTube channel? We also built Mscribe, the first inscription platform built from the ground up for the metaverse on Bitcoin. Connect your Bitmap ordinals and use our tools to bring your community into the virtual realm. Support us by joining the movement at mscribe.io. Like, comment, and subscribe for the latest alpha. Back to the video. Yeah. So shout out to the Mattyverse here, putting this tweet together. He talks about if we take the parcels and build a website on top of them, for example, 123, this block height.bitmap, and drop the bitmap at the end, we could have what looks like an IP address.
Yeah.
All right. And so why is this so important? Because as a developer, as creators, as a project trying to get developers to build for the metaverse, we need an infrastructure, a standard, if you will, so that when apps are deployed, they're deployed to the right location, on the right, bitmap in this example, on the right parcel location, and it has to be standard across.
Yes.
So that it's easy for creators to build with this understanding.
1000%. Yeah, because we know in the future for the metaverse isn't going to be constructed under like one singular stack. Right. There's going to be a variety of stack offerings, right?
Yeah.
Just like, the internet is built on a variety of coding frameworks and languages,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So,
but they still all use TCP IP.
Exactly. They need that underlying infrastructure. So like whatever it is that the next developer thinks is like a more optimal, framework to deliver functionalities and stuff to the end user.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the front end or back end or whatever, it still all operates under the same understanding.
Yes.
Right. So they all result in like an interoperable experience across any web framework, right? So the metaverse has to be the same way.
Yeah.
We're going to develop different stacks. We're going to have our own. The next guy's going to have his own.
Mm-hmm.
But from the end user perspective, you're part of a very cohesive metaverse layer. And that is the application layer that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people like the aesthetic of what Minecraft is. Not me. I want more Unreal Engine stuff.
Correct.
Right. But
I'm somewhere in like the middle ground. Unreal Engine for me is too much, too heavy, too real.
Yeah.
I mean, it's beautiful, right? But it's like, God damn it, dude.
It's too real.
It's like you're trying way too hard, dude.
Yeah.
And then of course Minecraft's the opposite spectrum. It's like, dude,
it's like you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. I like some middle ground, like something, right? But that's just all of us. We all have our own palettes.
And the main point is that whatever operating system you choose, it's built on top of this TCP IP layer so that builders who make applications can deploy in each one.
Yeah.
Right. Regardless of like trying to get into one silo or another. So it's important that, everyone follows the standard and recognizes it. So that's why we keep talking about it. And Matty did a very good job kind of putting the thoughts together in a single tweet.
Yeah, I think this is a good narrative. And you said something very interesting before we started recording. It's like, why continue to talk about this? It's kind of like we're building white blood cells out there.
Yeah.
It's like the more people who understand why the standards are important, right?
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to be a developer to like even care, right? As long as you understand the importance of building standards for developers to leverage in the future. Anytime you see somebody building outside the standard, you kind of attack them in a way, the way a white blood cell would, right?
Yeah.
In order for them to like, conform to what it is that the standard is supposed to enable.
Yeah. So what we're doing here is we're training the white blood cells to understand what is the right way to build.
Correct.
And it's not so much about attacking; it's more about educating, right? We want
attacking was definitely the wrong word.
Well, yeah, but that's what white blood cells do.
Correct.
Right. So it works, but we want builders to understand this, and it's not obvious, right? A builder doesn't come in and see bitmap, and they don't automatically see TCP/IP here, right?
Oh, absolutely not. I think most people just see like a bunch of degens, like having a blast with some orange squares.
Yeah.
But they don't understand because they don't come with the perspective of actually trying to build in a metaverse ecosystem, right? They don't understand the problems that come with that.
Yeah.
But some do, right?
Yeah.
And I think as long as more and more developers understand the importance of that, and the better the ecosystem will be over in the long run.
Yeah, and this is so important because we just did a video yesterday talking about, the community just like coming out and just building stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so many builders have come out to build on top of bitmaps, and so many more are going to be coming into the future. And we want everybody to have a same understanding as what Bitmap is. It's not just blockI.bitmap and just some text inscription. It is a TCP/IP standard for all builders to build on top of, right? If any builder doesn't build on top of this standard, the white blood cells are going to come out, and they're going to let
the
that
applications aren't going to function.
Yeah, they won't function.
You won't be a part of
And they're free to build, their own silo.
Their own stuff.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. It's just the apps and the entire ecosystem won't be deployable and functional there. That's it.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, because you develop a technical infrastructure that is able to read and interpret the bitmap layer.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're operating outside of the actual, again, like the routing system, how are you going to relay the right data and information to this application layer?
Yeah.
It has to be existent within this framework, or else, the packet not received.
Yeah,
pretty much. You're gonna get that error message every single time. It's like, sorry, dude, you're trying to run like a bitmap app.
Yeah,
it's not gonna deploy here.
That's right.
Because it's not receiving the signal in the same sense. Like, if you develop outside the frameworks of the internet, you're gonna get none of its benefits.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's what we're trying to encourage here, right? Because we're all collectively part of this together.
The white blood cell system.
Something like that.
We're all white blood cells trying to attack cancer and diseases.
Fuck. Yeah, definitely don't want cancers, dude. So hopefully this made sense. I guess we're gonna slowly kind of like roll out different development things from us, our team and whatnot, that's going to really support this idea and like make things a lot more clear.
Yeah.
If you want like a beginning version of understanding what an application layer looks like and what apps for the metaverse look like, you can always go to MetaZone.
Yeah, metazone.io.
Yeah. So we want to have the right infrastructure. So things like metas, which is, the actual applications of the metaverse, can function in a much more interoperable environment, right?
Yeah, as it should be.
Yeah.
Right. So because our developers, if you think about it, put your shoes as a developer on, right? And you're looking at the metaverse landscape and you're seeing a bunch of silos, right? So that's it. There's a bunch of silos. So I got to pick a silo to build on top of because I like the metaverse. I like what it's, the potential here. So I'm going to pick a silo and build for it.
Yeah.
The problem with that is you are picking a silo, right? There's a limited community, has so much growth potential because it doesn't communicate with anything else. And so you could either pick a silo or just build an iPhone app, right? Or an Android app, right? Hundreds of millions of users, right? And so that's the issue when creating a bunch of silos.
Yeah.
So instead of silos, we have this potential TCP/IP layer where now there are no more silos. There's different stacks, different operating systems, right? But you can build for each operating system, and ultimately you have like this application that supports Windows and Apple, right? Mac OS. And then that application now deployable in 2 operating systems, now it can work for, a huge network of people, right? And so when we build on top of this TCP/IP layer, now you're not picking a silo. All of a sudden your app is deployable in multiple operating systems. And now you're cultivating the potential $1 trillion ecosystem of the metaverse. We didn't say it was $1 trillion.
No.
Right? Grayscale said it.
Yeah.
Right? City says that.
Yeah.
Right? So, that's what we're looking at here.
Totally agree, dude. Yeah. So shout out Mattyverse for picking out that golden moment, because it just kind of came naturally within that conversation with Jack.
Yeah.
And that was definitely one of the bigger, I guess, revelations we've had recently. Right, we didn't understand this right away when it came to Bitmap. We always just knew innately that standards were missing.
Yeah,
but identifying exactly which ones were missing. Yeah,
and this isn't the only one, right? We don't just need TCP/IP, right?
Yeah, if you look at the actual layering of what makes the internet, there's multiple layers. It's about 7 or 8 of them or something. So the metaverse will probably have that plus more.
Probably more.
Yeah. So we got a lot of work to do. This metaverse thing is not just like I said, it's not a JPEG project.
Yeah, definitely not.
This is like a multi-year, maybe even multi-decade like journey.
Yeah.
Right. So hopefully you're young enough, to kind of like be a part of the whole thing, because that's going to be an interesting tale to tell your kids and grandkids.
Hopefully you're not 80 years old now.
Yeah, dude, you're gonna miss it, dude. Fuck. But it's okay. It's gonna happen.
You might live in the metaverse.
Yeah.
At some point through technical consciousness.
Oh, dude, now you're going too far.
It's possible. I mean, we got
of course
artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
All right, that's it for us. Shout out to Matty again. Any builders out there, definitely hit us up. We got a ton of stuff that we're building, and we just want to hear from everybody, right?
Yeah, the pace of development is accelerating, which is probably way more exciting than seeing like the pace of speculation accelerate, which is what it was like a few weeks ago. It's like, holy shit, more and more people are, floor price go up. I mean, that's important too.
Yeah.
But the most important thing to see is developer activity go up.
Yeah, 100%.
When you're trying to analyze which of the blockchains are like supreme, that's the metric you look at, right? So which of the metaverse ecosystems reign strongest?
Yeah.
Who has the most devs?
Yeah, I don't see devs joining PFP projects.
No, fuck no.
Right? They're joining what? They're joining Bitmap.
They're joining the metaverse.
Yes.
Hell yeah, dude. That's what I'm talking about.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. Make sure you follow us on all our Twitter channels, and never leave the metaverse, right, our man?
Never leave the metaverse. Shout out Nev. Hopefully you're still watching.
There you go. All right, appreciate it. We'll catch you in the next video.
Peace.